The night sky above the Atacama Desert was clear when the signal arrived. Deep in the mountains of Chile, the massive radio telescope array hummed with its usual rhythm, listening to the cosmic silence that had persisted for all of human history. Then, at exactly 0347 Universal Time, everything changed. Commander Elena Vasquez was drinking her third coffee of the night shift when the computers started screaming. Not the gentle beep of a distant pulsar or the whisper of background radiation. This was different. This was intentional. This was a message. Her hands shook as she pulled up the data stream. The signal was coming from a star system 42 light-years away, repeating every 30 seconds with mathematical precision. But it was not just numbers or pretty patterns. When she ran it through the translation algorithms, words began to form. Alien words, a cry for help that transcended language itself. Please, the message said. They are killing us. Our worlds burn. Our children die. Is anyone listening, please? Help us. Elena felt tears on her cheeks before she realized she was crying. In the background of the transmission, she could hear it. Sounds that needed no translation. Screaming. Explosions. The universal language of suffering that every living thing understood. Within an hour, every major space agency on Earth had confirmed the signal. Within 6 hours, the United Nations had called an emergency session. Within 12 hours, the world knew that humanity was not alone in the universe, and someone out there was dying. The debates began immediately. Politicians argued about resources and risk. Scientists wanted to study the signal more carefully. Religious leaders questioned what this meant for humanity's place in creation. But while they talked, the signal kept coming. Every 30 seconds, the same desperate plea. We cannot get involved in an alien war, said the American president during the Emergency Security Council meeting. We have no idea what we are dealing with. We cannot ignore this, replied the African Union representative. Someone is asking for help. What does it say about us if we turn away? Admiral James Corbin sat in the observation gallery, watching the politicians argue. He was a career military man, 62 years old, with gray hair and eyes that had seen 3 wars on Earth. He had commanded the United Earth Defense Force for 5 years, ever since the various nations had finally agreed to pool their military space assets. The UEDF had seemed like a good idea when they were worried about asteroids and space pirates. Now it might need to face something much worse. His phone buzzed. It was Elena Vasquez. She had been transferred to his command center to continue analysis of the signal. Admiral, I have decoded more of the transmission. You need to see this. Corbin left the political theater and headed to the communication center. Elena looked exhausted, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes red from crying and staring at screens. Show me, he said. She pulled up a series of images that had been embedded in the signal. They showed a species that looked almost insect-like, with 4 arms and large eyes. But they stood upright, wore clothes, built cities. In the images, these cities were burning. Ships filled the sky, raining fire down on the population below. One image showed what was clearly a school. Children huddled together while their teachers tried to protect them. They called themselves the Valari, Elena explained. They have been a spacefaring civilization for over 3,000 years. They are scientists, artists, explorers. They have never fought a war. Who is attacking them? Corbin asked. Elena pulled up another image. These aliens looked like nightmares made flesh. Massive creatures covered in armor-like scales with teeth designed for ripping and claws meant for killing. Their ships were brutal, angular things that looked more like weapons than vessels. The Kresh Dominion, she said. According to the data in the transmission, they are a warrior empire that has been expanding for centuries. The Valari tried to negotiate. They offered technology, resources, anything. The Kresh just laughed and started the invasion. Corbin stared at the images. How long do the Valari have? Based on the signal strength and the progression of the attacks, maybe 3 weeks. Maybe less. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question that would change everything. Can we reach them in time? Elena pulled up a star chart. If we use every ship we have, push the engines beyond their recommended limits, and pray nothing breaks down. Yes, barely. How many ships can we deploy? The UEDF has 200 combat-capable vessels. Most are converted military shuttles and frigates. Nothing like what we are seeing in these images, Corbin smiled. It was not a happy smile. 200 ships crewed by humans who grew up on a planet where we spent 10,000 years learning how to fight each other. Against an empire that has never met us before. He turned to Elena. Commander, send a message to all UEDF facilities. Full mobilization. We launch in 72 hours. Sir, the Security Council has not authorized military action. Then they can court-martial me when we get back. If someone calls for help, we answer. That is what humans do. Elena nodded and started sending the orders. Across Earth, alarm bells started ringing. Soldiers reported to their posts. Engineers began emergency maintenance on every available ship. Weapons that had been designed for theoretical conflicts were loaded and armed. In orbit, the fleet began to assemble. They were not impressive ships. Most were only 50 years beyond the first primitive spacecraft that had carried humans to the moon. They were small, fragile things compared to what the Volari images showed. But they were crewed by humans. And humans had never been very good at giving up. Admiral Corbin stood on the bridge of the UEDF flagship Indomitable and watched his fleet gather. 200 ships, 20,000 crew members, all volunteering to fly into the unknown to help people they had never met. The Galactic Council, monitoring Earth's primitive radio signals from their stations dozens of light years away, detected the mobilization. They were amused. These newcomers, who had barely left their own solar system, thought they could challenge the Kresh Dominion. It would be a useful lesson for other primitive species. The Council settled in to watch what they expected would be a very short, very brutal demonstration of why young civilizations should stay home. But the Council did not know humans. They did not know that humans had named their ships things like Indomitable and Defiant and Never Surrender. They did not know that humans had a saying, passed down through countless generations: the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. The fleet finished assembling. Admiral Corbin gave the order. 200 ships turned toward the stars and engaged their engines. The largest military deployment in human history was underway. Somewhere, 42 light-years away, the Volari kept broadcasting their desperate plea. And for the first time in 3 weeks, they were about to get an answer. The fleet had been traveling for 9 days when the first impossible thing happened. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen was working in the engine room of the destroyer Relentless when the main power coupling exploded. The blast should have killed him. Instead, he rolled backward on instinct, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and had the flames out before the automatic systems even activated. He stared at his hands, wondering how he had moved so fast. That was the third malfunction this week, his assistant said. At this rate, we will not make it to Volari space. Chen looked at the destroyed coupling. It would take a shipyard 3 weeks to manufacture a replacement. He had maybe 6 hours before they needed to drop out of faster-than-light travel. Get me some steel plates, a welding torch, and whatever loose wire we have in storage. Sir, you cannot seriously think you can repair this. The tolerances are too precise. It requires specialized equipment. We do not have specialized equipment. We have what we brought in human stubbornness. Now get me those materials. 6 hours later, the coupling was not just repaired. It was running at 108% efficiency. Chen could not explain exactly what he had done. He had just looked at the problem, trusted his instincts, and built something that worked. When he filed his report, Admiral Corbin noted it in his log. The first of many such reports. Across the fleet, similar stories were repeating. A navigation computer failed on the frigate Marathon. The navigator, a young woman from Brazil named Lieutenant Santos, manually calculated their position using star charts and basic mathematics. She was accurate to within 0.03%. Impossible for a human to do in their head, but she did it anyway. A life support system crashed on the carrier Valiant. The crew went without proper air recycling for 14 hours while they waited for parts to arrive from another ship. They should have been unconscious. Instead, they kept working, kept functioning, kept breathing air that had too much carbon dioxide and not enough oxygen. When the repair was complete, the doctor could not explain why they were all still alive. It is like we are adapting, Elena Vasquez said during one of her daily briefings with the Admiral. Every challenge we face, we overcome. Things that should be impossible for us are becoming routine. Admiral Corbin looked at the report stacking up on his desk. Or maybe, he said quietly, we are just now learning what humans are actually capable of when the stakes are high enough. On the 15th day, they intercepted a Kresh transmission. The alien language was harsh, all clicking sounds and growls, but the translation computers were getting better at understanding it. What they heard made everyone on the bridge go silent. The Valari homeworld will fall within 3 days, the Kresh commander was saying. Their defenses are pathetic. They beg for mercy like the weak creatures they are. I have orders to leave no survivors. The Dominion will use their world as a farming colony. Another Kresh voice responded, this one laughing. What about the distress signal they sent? Think anyone will answer? Who would dare? The Galactic Council is full of cowards. The other civilizations know better than to challenge us. The Valari will die alone, and their signal will serve as a warning to others. This is what happens when you refuse to submit to the Dominion. Elena looked at Admiral Corbin. The old soldier's face was carved from stone, but his eyes burned with cold fury. Send a message to all ships, Corbin said. Increase speed to maximum. I do not care if it burns out every engine we have. We are getting there in time. Sir, the engines are already beyond rated capacity. Then push them further. The fleet accelerated. Engineers performed miracles to keep the ships together. Pilots endured G-forces that should have rendered them unconscious. Medical officers treated symptoms that should not have been survivable. And somehow, impossibly, the fleet held together. On the 18th day, they encountered a damaged Kresh patrol ship. It was alone, limping through space after what looked like a skirmish with Valari defense forces. The 3-ship escort was no match for a Kresh warship, even a damaged one. Target locked. The weapons officer on the Indomitable reported, "One shot and we can destroy it." Corbin thought about the transmission they had intercepted, about the cruelty in those alien voices, about the casual way they discussed genocide. Then he thought about what kind of people humanity wanted to be. "Hail them," he said. "Sir, open a channel. I want to talk." The view screen flickered to life. The Kresh commander was exactly as terrifying as the images had suggested. Nearly 3 meters tall, covered in scales that looked like metal, with eyes that held nothing but contempt. "Humans," the Kresh said, and even through the translator, the word dripped with disdain. "The primitive apes who think they can play at war. You are far from your little world. Your ship is damaged," Corkin said calmly. "Surrender and we will repair it. You and your crew can go home." The Kresh stared at him. Then it started laughing. It was not a pleasant sound. "You offer us mercy, you? The Dominion will crush you like the insects you are." "Maybe," Corbin said, "but that decision is above your pay grade. Stand down, let us repair your ship and carry a message back to your commanders." "What message?" "We are coming. Stand down or face consequences. Your choice." The Kresh's laughter died. Something in the Admiral's voice, in his eyes, made the alien commander pause. There was no fear there. No hesitation. Just a simple statement of fact delivered by someone who had clearly already made peace with whatever came next. "You are either very brave or very stupid," the Kresh said. "We are human. Sometimes it is hard to tell the difference." The Kresh ship powered down its weapons. For the next 6 hours, human engineering teams swarmed over the alien vessel, repairing damage, replacing parts, making it space-worthy again. The Kresh crew watched in silence, unable to understand why their enemies were helping them. As the patrol ship prepared to depart, the Kresh commander contacted the Indomitable one final time. "Why?" it asked. "Why help us?" "Because we are not monsters," Corbin said. "And we are hoping you will choose not to be either." "Carry our message." The Kresh ship jumped to faster-than-light speed and disappeared. On its bridge, the commander was already composing a report that troubled it deeply. It had studied hundreds of species. It knew how they thought, how they fought, how they died. But these humans were different. They showed mercy to enemies. They accomplished impossible repairs. They pushed their ships and their bodies beyond reasonable limits. The Kresh commander added a note to its report. Just 3 words. But those 3 words would echo through the Dominion's military command with the force of a bomb. They are coming. The human fleet continued its journey. They were close now. Just 3 more days. 3 more days until they reached Valari space. 3 more days until the galaxy learned what humans were capable of. In the observation deck of the Indomitable, Elena Vasquez stared out at the stars. She thought about the signal that had started all of this, about the crying children and desperate parents, about the casual cruelty of the Kresh and the cowardice of the Galactic Council. "We are really doing this," she said to no one in particular. 200 ships against an empire. Lieutenant Commander Jackson, who had been standing in the shadows, stepped forward. "Better than sitting at home doing nothing. We might all die, probably. But at least we answered the call." Elena smiled. It was a tired, scared smile. But it was also filled with something else. Pride. They were doing the right thing. Whatever happened next, they were doing the right thing. In the distance, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if even they knew that something important was about to happen. Something that would change the galaxy forever. The humans were coming, and nothing would ever be the same. The Valari homeworld appeared on their screens like a wounded jewel. It had once been beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents visible from space. Now it was surrounded by fire. Hundreds of Kresh warships orbited the planet, raining destruction down on the cities below. Debris from destroyed defense satellites created a deadly cloud around the world. 537 enemy contacts. The tactical officer reported, his voice tight with fear. "Admiral, we are outnumbered more than 2-1. Admiral Corbin studied the tactical display. The Kresh fleet was massive, their ships at least 3 times larger than anything humanity had built. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a city, and there were over 500 of them. "Broadcast our message on all frequencies," Corbin ordered, "both to the Kresh and the Valari. Let everyone know we are here." Elena Vasquez activated the communications array. "This is Admiral James Corbin of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call. We are here to help. To the Kresh Dominion forces, this is your final warning. Cease your attack and withdraw immediately." For a moment, there was only static. Then the view screen activated. The Kresh War Master appeared, even larger and more terrifying than the patrol ship commander. It was covered in scars with decorations that looked like they were made from the bones of previous enemies. "Humans," the War Master said, and its voice was like grinding metal. "The patrol ship told us you were coming. We thought it was a joke. 200 primitive vessels think they can challenge the might of the Dominion." It showed its teeth in what might have been a smile. "Surrender now and we will make your deaths quick." "No," Corbin said simply. The War Master blinked, as if it could not quite believe what it had heard. "You refuse? You are outnumbered. You are outgunned. Your ships are made of tinfoil and dreams. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. What makes you think you have any chance?" "Because," Corbin said, and now his voice was hard as steel, "someone asked for help, and we are human. We do not abandon those who need us." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "All ships, battle formation Delta 7. Weapons free. For the Valari. For humanity. For everyone who ever sent a distress call into the dark and hoped someone would answer." The fleet moved forward. 200 small ships against 500 massive warships. It should have been a slaughter. The Galactic Council observers, watching from their safe distance, prepared to document humanity's destruction. A useful lesson for other primitive species who did not know their place. Then the battle began, and everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare shattered. The human ships did not attack like a traditional fleet. They did not form neat lines or follow established military doctrine. Instead, they moved like a swarm, like a school of fish pursued by predators. They were fast, impossibly fast, dodging weapons fire that should have destroyed them. "How are they moving like that?" A Kresh gunnery officer screamed as another volley missed its target. The computer predicted their position. They should be dead. But the human pilots were not following predictable patterns. They were improvising, reacting on instinct, making split-second decisions that no computer could anticipate. Lieutenant Chen in his fighter craft rolled under a plasma blast, returned fire, and destroyed a Kresh weapons battery. He should not have been able to react that fast. No organic being should, but he did. The Kresh tried to surround a group of human frigates. Standard tactics. Cut them off, destroy them, move to the next target. But the humans did something no sane commander would attempt. They flew directly into the debris field from the destroyed satellites, using the spinning chunks of metal as cover. When the Kresh followed, the humans deliberately shot the debris, sending it spinning into the pursuing ships. "They are insane," a Kresh captain reported. "They are using their environment as a weapon. They are taking impossible risks." The War Master watched as 3 human ships rammed one of his destroyers. The human vessels were destroyed in the collision, but so was the Kresh ship. What species sacrifices themselves like this? It wondered aloud. Commander Vasquez could have answered that question. Humans did. Humans who remembered the Alamo and Thermopylae and Stalingrad. Humans who had learned through 10,000 years of warfare on Earth that sometimes the only way to win was to pay a price that made the enemy question if victory was worth it. The battle raged for 6 hours. The space around Valari became a graveyard of shattered ships and drifting bodies. The Kresh were winning, but not quickly, not easily. Every human ship they destroyed took 2 or 3 Kresh vessels with it. Then Commander Vasquez proposed something that should have gotten her court-martialed. "Admiral, there is a Kresh command carrier at coordinates 774. If we could board it and take it down from inside, it would disrupt their entire fleet coordination." "Board it?" the tactical officer asked. "Commander, no one has done boarding actions in space combat for over 1,000 years. It is considered too risky, too impractical." "Good," Vasquez said. "Then they will not expect it." Corbin looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Take a team. Make it count." Vasquez assembled 30 volunteers, Marines who had trained for combat in confined spaces, who had practiced hand-to-hand fighting, who were ready to face the enemy face-to-face. They loaded into an assault shuttle and launched toward the Kresh carrier. The Kresh did not even try to stop them. Why would they? The shuttle was tiny, insignificant. They were focused on the larger ships. By the time they realized what was happening, Vasquez and her team had already cut through the hull and were inside. The Kresh crew had never fought an enemy inside their own ship. They were warriors, yes, but they were used to ship-to-ship combat, to weapons fired from a distance. They were not ready for humans in close quarters. Vasquez moved through the corridors like a ghost. She had trained in 3 different martial arts on Earth. She carried a rifle, but when ammunition ran low, she used a combat knife. When that broke, she used her hands. Behind her, her team moved with the same deadly efficiency. The Kresh were bigger, stronger, with natural armor and claws. But humans were faster, more flexible, and absolutely relentless. When a Kresh warrior wounded 1 human, 2 more would attack from different angles. When the Kresh tried to use their size advantage, humans would slide under their attacks and strike at weak points. Vasquez reached the command deck covered in blood, both human and Kresh. Half her team was dead or wounded. But they had made it. The Kresh officers on the bridge stood between her and the control systems. "You cannot win," one of them growled. "Even if you destroy this ship, the fleet will continue." "Maybe," Vasquez said, breathing hard. "But you will not be there to see it." The fight on the bridge lasted 3 minutes. It felt like hours. When it was over, Vasquez was the last human standing. She was injured, exhausted, and running on pure adrenaline. With shaking hands, she accessed the carrier systems and activated the self-destruct sequence. "Indomitable, this is Vasquez. Package delivered. Coming home." She gathered the survivors and fought her way back to the shuttle. Behind them, the Kresh carrier began to explode. The massive ship broke apart, sending debris into the surrounding fleet. More importantly, with the command carrier gone, the Kresh fleet lost coordination. Admiral Corbin saw the opportunity and seized it. "All ships, full assault. Hit them while they are confused." The human fleet surged forward. They were battered, bleeding, running on fumes and determination, but they pushed harder. They fought fiercer. They refused to stop. The Kresh War Master watched as his fleet began to falter. He had fought hundreds of battles. He had destroyed civilizations. But he had never faced an enemy like this, an enemy that would not break, that could not be intimidated, that fought with a fury that seemed to come from the depths of their very souls. "Retreat," he ordered. The word tasted like poison in his mouth. The Kresh Dominion did not retreat, but if they stayed, these humans would destroy them all. The Kresh fleet turned and ran. Over 300 ships destroyed or abandoned. The remainder fled into faster-than-light travel, leaving the Valari homeworld behind. The human fleet did not pursue. They could not. They had lost 47 ships. Thousands of crew members were dead or wounded. The survivors were exhausted beyond description, but they had won. On the surface of the Valari homeworld, the bombardment stopped. The cities were in ruins, but the people were alive. They looked up at the sky and saw the human fleet in orbit, saw the small ships that had defied an empire to answer their call for help. The Valari sent a message. It was simple, but it carried the weight of an entire civilization's gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you for hearing us. Thank you for coming." On the bridge of the indomitable, Admiral Corbin closed his eyes. The cost had been terrible, but someone had called for help, and humanity had answered. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. The observers' reports were impossible. Primitive humans had defeated the Kresh Dominion, a species that had barely left their home system had just changed the balance of power in the entire galaxy. The universe had just learned what humans were capable of. And the stars would never forget. Other species began to take notice. The Gentar, who had secretly admired the human courage, sent a delegation. They offered shield technology and promised to consider providing military assistance. A few smaller civilizations, tired of living in fear of the Kresh, began to whisper about joining the humans. But the Galactic Council remained paralyzed by indecision. Helping humanity meant war with the Kresh. Most species were not willing to take that risk. "We will send thoughts and prayers," one ambassador said, actually believing this was helpful. The human ambassador to the Galactic Council, a woman named Ambassador Chen, who had been appointed 3 days after first contact, stood up. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, but when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of an entire planet. "Keep your thoughts and prayers," she said coldly. "We will face the Kresh with or without you. But remember this moment. Remember that when we needed you, you chose safety over justice, and remember that we did not make that choice." She walked out of the chamber. Behind her, several ambassadors looked uncomfortable. A few looked ashamed, and some, just a few, looked like they were reconsidering their positions. On Earth, the mobilization continued. Every shipyard was working at maximum capacity. New weapons were being developed, tested, and deployed, but everyone knew the truth. They were not going to have enough ships, not enough weapons, not enough time. "We need a miracle," the UN Secretary General said during a strategy meeting. "No," said General Zhang, who commanded Earth's ground forces. "We need to do what humans do best. We need to fight smarter, fight harder, and refuse to give up. The Kresh think they can break us because they outnumber us. They do not understand that humans have never cared about the odds." On the Kresh homeworld, War Master Throck, who had commanded the fleet at Valari, knelt before the Dominion's supreme ruler. The massive chamber was decorated with trophies from 1,000 conquered worlds. Throck felt small beneath the gaze of his leader. "You were defeated by primitives," the supreme ruler hissed. "You have brought shame to the Dominion. They are not primitives, Excellency. They are something else. Something dangerous. Then we will destroy them completely. The Apex fleet will turn their world to ash. Every human will die, and the galaxy will learn what happens to those who defy us." Throck wanted to say more, wanted to explain that killing every human might not be as easy as his ruler believed, but he stayed silent. He had failed once. He would not fail again. The Apex fleet began its journey toward Earth, 2,000 ships crewed by the most brutal warriors in the galaxy. Their orders were simple: complete annihilation. In the space between stars, both fleets prepared for what would be the largest battle in galactic history. The humans knew they were probably going to die. The Kresh knew they were going to win. But neither side understood what was about to happen. Neither side knew that other species were watching, waiting, making decisions that would change everything. Admiral Corbin stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable and looked at Earth in the distance. His home, his world. Soon it would be a battlefield. "Sir," Elena Vasquez said quietly, standing beside him. "Whatever happens, we did the right thing. We answered the call." "I know," Corbin said. "I just hope it was enough." Across the galaxy, 47 different species were asking themselves the same question. The humans had shown courage when everyone else showed cowardice. They had sacrificed when others chose safety. Now they faced extinction, and the galaxy had to decide what kind of universe they wanted to live in. One where courage was punished, or one where standing up for others meant something. The countdown had begun. 30 days until the Apex fleet arrived. 30 days to prepare for the battle that would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of every species in the galaxy. The Apex fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of humanity's solar system, like a plague of locusts. 2,000 warships, each one a floating fortress of death and destruction. They formed a wall of metal and firepower that stretched across the darkness of space. War Master Throck stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devastator, and smiled. Ahead of him, scattered between Jupiter and Mars, was the human defense fleet. He counted the ships carefully. 600 vessels, better than the 200 they had faced at Valari, but still pathetically insufficient. "They are brave," Throck admitted to his second-in-command. "I will give them that. They know they cannot win, yet they stand and fight anyway." "Shall we offer them surrender terms?" No, the Supreme Ruler's orders were clear. Complete annihilation. We will glass their planet, destroy every ship, kill every human, and the galaxy will know the price of defying the Dominion. Throck opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in both fleets. Humans, this is your end. We outnumber you 3-1. Your world will burn. Your species will be erased. You had your chance to stay home, to stay out of galactic affairs. You chose to make yourselves our enemy. Now you will pay the price. Admiral Corbin, aboard the Indomitable near Mars orbit, listened to the Kresh commander's words. Around him, his crew was silent. They all knew the odds. They all knew they were probably going to die today. Admiral, the communications officer said quietly, should we respond? Corbin thought for a moment. Then he activated his own broadcast. War Master Throck, you made a mistake. You think this is about numbers. You think this is about firepower. But you are wrong. This is about whether the universe is a place where calling for help means something, where standing up for others matters. We heard a cry for help and we answered. If that is why we die today, then so be it. But we will not stop fighting. We will not surrender. And we will make you regret ever coming to our system. He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. For Earth, for the Valari, for everyone who has ever been threatened by bullies who think might makes right. All ships prepare for battle. The human fleet began to move forward. They had prepared the battlefield as best they could. Mines hidden in debris fields, weapons platforms positioned around the gas giants. Every advantage they could create. But everyone knew it would not be enough. Then something impossible happened. A new group of ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. 20 vessels with distinctive crystalline hulls. The Gentar had arrived. Human fleet, came a transmission in perfect English. We have decided that your cause is just. We will stand with you. Before Corbin could even respond, more ships appeared. 30 vessels from Aquari, 15 from Meridian, 10 from a species humanity had never even met before. And then more. And more. Elena Vasquez stared at the tactical display as the count kept climbing. Admiral, we are reading 147 Allied ships. No, wait, 192. They are still coming. The Valari arrived with every warship they could fly, grateful for a chance to repay their debt. Other species came because they were tired of being afraid. Some came because they believed in what the humans represented. A few came because they had been looking for an excuse to fight the Kresh, and humanity had given them one. By the time the fleet had fully assembled, 479 ships from 47 different species floated alongside the human defense force. It was still not enough to match the Kresh numbers, but it was no longer a hopeless fight. On the Devastator, Throck felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. They should not have come, he said. This is not their fight. Perhaps, his second-in-command replied, they feel it is. Throck snarled. It does not matter. We still outnumber them. All ships attack formation. Destroy them all. The Apex fleet surged forward. 2,000 warships against 1,100 defenders. The largest space battle in recorded history began. The Kresh fought with brutal efficiency. The Allied forces fought with desperate courage. For 8 hours, the space between Mars and Jupiter became a hell of fire and death. Ships exploded. Thousands died. The battle raged back and forth. The Gentar shields protected human vessels that would have been destroyed. The Aquari weapons technology tore through Kresh armor. The Meridian medical ships kept crews alive who should have died. And the humans fought with a ferocity that infected everyone around them. They do not know when to quit, a Gentar captain said with admiration, as he watched a damaged human destroyer ram a Kresh battleship. They are insane, and it is glorious. Commander Vasquez led another boarding team, this time targeting Throck's flagship itself. She had become famous across the galaxy in the past month, the human who had taken a Kresh command carrier with just 30 soldiers. Now she had 300, a mix of humans and volunteers from a dozen species. They fought their way through the Devastator's corridors. The Kresh crew was ready for them this time, but it did not matter. The Allied forces moved with coordinated fury. When humans tired, Gentar warriors took the front line. When ammunition ran low, Aquari soldiers provided covering fire with their organic weapons. Vasquez reached the bridge covered in blood and carrying a broken Kresh blade she had taken from a fallen enemy. Around her, only 30 of her 300 soldiers remained standing, but they had made it. Throck stood waiting, his own weapon drawn. So the famous human boarding specialist comes to challenge me directly. You are brave. Foolish but brave. I am just here to give you a message, Elena said, breathing hard. You should have stayed home. The fight was brief and brutal. Throck was faster, stronger, and more experienced. But Elena had fought her way through 3 wars on Earth before she ever went to space. She had trained in martial arts since she was 6 years old, and she had something Throck did not have. She had a reason to win that was bigger than herself. Elena dodged under Throck's first strike, rolled past his second, and drove the broken blade into the weak point under his armor. The War Master fell to his knees, shock in his eyes. "How?" he gasped. "I am Kresh. We are the strongest warriors in the galaxy." Elena leaned close. "You are strong, but we are human, and we learned to fight on a world where everything wanted to kill us, where we had to become predators just to survive. You picked a fight with a Death World species. We tried to warn you." Throck looked at her, really looked at her, and finally understood. Humans were not just warriors. They were survivors of a planet that had forged them in fire. Every human carried the genetic memory of 10,000 years of struggle. They did not just fight to win. They fought because fighting was woven into their very DNA. "Tell me," Throck whispered. "Why did you come? Why did you answer the Valari call?" Elena thought about the distress signal that had started everything, about the crying children and desperate parents, about the choice humanity had made. "Because someone asked for help," she said simply. "And we are human. We do not abandon those who need us." Throck closed his eyes. With his dying breath, he activated his ship's self-destruct sequence, not to destroy the boarding team, but to signal the fleet. The Kresh understood only one thing: strength, and they had been defeated by strength greater than their own. The Apex fleet, seeing their flagship explode, began to waver. They had already lost over 1,200 ships. The combined Allied forces had shown a coordination and determination they could not break. And their War Master was dead, killed in single combat by a human half his size. The Kresh Supreme Commander, watching from the Dominion homeworld, gave the order he never thought he would give. "Recall the fleet. Offer full surrender." Across the battlefield, Kresh ships began to power down their weapons. The firing stopped. The explosions ceased. In the sudden silence, both sides took stock of the carnage. Over 1,100 ships destroyed. Over 40,000 beings dead. The space around Earth was a graveyard, but Earth still stood. Humanity survived, and they had not done it alone. Admiral Corbin, his ship barely holding together, opened a channel to all Allied vessels. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, thank you. Thank you for hearing our call. Thank you for standing with us." Responses came from dozens of species, some in languages humanity was still learning, but the meaning was clear. They had not come to save humanity. They had come because humanity had shown them what was possible. That standing up to bullies mattered. That answering distress calls was not just noble, it was necessary. The Galactic Council, forced to watch as dozens of their member species had acted without permission, called an emergency session. They had no choice but to acknowledge what had happened. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. "We need to offer humanity a seat on the council," the Valorian ambassador said. "Not as junior members, as full partners." "They earned it," the Valari representative added. "In blood and courage." The vote was not unanimous. Some species still feared what humanity represented, but the majority recognized the truth. The galaxy had changed, and humanity was now part of its future. Admiral Corbin received the Council's offer aboard the Indomitable. The ship was in orbit around Earth, undergoing repairs. Below, the planet celebrated. Above, the mixed fleet of allied species began the long process of recovering the dead and repairing the wounded. "They are offering us a seat at the table," Elena Vasquez said, reading the message. "Full council membership. Voting rights." "The whole thing?" Corbin looked at the offer. Then he looked at Elena. "What do you think?" "I think we should accept. But with conditions." "What conditions?" Elena smiled. It was tired but genuine, that the council establishes a new rule. From now on, when a distress call is received, it must be answered. No debates, no waiting. If someone calls for help, the galaxy responds. Corbin nodded slowly. "They will never go for it. It is too big a commitment. Then we will make them go for it. We will make helping each other the new normal. We will show them that answering the call is not just the right thing to do. It is the only thing to do." Admiral Corbin drafted humanity's response. They would accept the council seat, but only if the council agreed to establish the Galactic Defense Initiative, a commitment that any member species that called for help would receive immediate assistance from all other members. No exceptions. No debates. The council argued for 3 days. In the end, they agreed. The alternative was letting humanity operate independently, which they had proven they would do anyway. Better to bring them into the fold and hope their idealism did not cause too much trouble. 100 years later, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Galactic Defense Initiative had responded to 47 distress calls. Species that once lived in fear now knew that help would come if they needed it. The phrase, "We heard your call," had become the motto of the combined fleet that patrolled known space. In schools across 1,000 worlds, young beings learned about the Battle of Earth, about Commander Elena Vasquez and her impossible boarding actions, about Admiral James Corbin who brought humanity to the stars, about the Volari who first sent the distress call that changed everything. But most of all, they learned about humanity, the Death World species that heard a cry for help and answered, the warriors who fought not for conquest but for others, the beings who proved that the galaxy could be more than just survival of the strongest. On Earth, in the renamed Corbin Space Academy, a new class of cadets stood at attention. They came from Earth, from Volari, from Gentar, from dozens of species, all training together, all learning the lessons that humanity had taught the galaxy. When someone calls for help, their instructor said, repeating the words that had become sacred across the known worlds, "What do we do?" "We answer," the cadets replied in unison. Always. In the darkness between stars on worlds not yet discovered, distress calls still went out sometimes. But now those who sent them knew something that the Volari had learned a century before. Someone was listening. Someone would come. Because the galaxy had learned what it meant to be human, and the stars would never forget. The news traveled at the speed of light, but the shock traveled even faster. On the crystalline world of Gentar, the High Council interrupted their meditation for the first time in 300 years. On the water planet of Aquarii, the pod leaders gathered in emergency session. On dozens of worlds across the galaxy, species that had never agreed on anything suddenly found themselves united in a single emotion: disbelief. The humans had defeated the Kresh Dominion. In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, the emergency session had been going for 12 hours straight. Representatives from 47 species argued, shouted, and in some cases fled in terror. The chamber had never seen such chaos. "This is impossible," insisted the Valorian ambassador, its 6 eyes blinking in distress. "The Kresh have been expanding for 4 centuries. They have conquered 63 worlds. How could primitives defeat them?" The council's chief observer brought up the battle footage. Even watching it again, none of them could quite believe it. The human ships moving in patterns that defied standard military doctrine. The boarding action that no civilized species had attempted in 1,000 years. The absolute refusal to surrender even when facing certain death. "We need to understand these humans," said the Thurian representative, a being of pure energy that flickered nervously in its containment field. "They are dangerous, unpredictable." "They saved the Volari," countered the small delegation from the rescued world. "They risked everything to answer our call when the rest of you did nothing." That statement brought uncomfortable silence. The Galactic Council had received the Volari distress signal. They had debated for 3 weeks about whether to intervene. In the end, they had voted to do nothing. Interfering with the Kresh was too risky. Better to lose one species than provoke a war. The humans had not bothered with such calculations. They had just come. "We should send a diplomatic delegation to Earth," suggested the Meridian ambassador, a cautious species known for careful planning. "We need to establish relations before they become a threat." "Before?" another voice asked. "Look at those ships. Look at what they did. They are already a threat." While the council argued, xenoanthropologists across the galaxy were discovering something that terrified them even more than the battle. Footage. Dr. Kilrathi of the Observational Institute had spent 3 days studying everything they could find about human history. The data was limited, mostly harvested from Earth's radio and internet transmissions, but what they found was horrifying. They fought each other, Dr. Kilrathi told his colleagues during an emergency conference. Not just one war, not just one conflict. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. For their entire recorded history, humans have been in a near constant state of warfare. He brought up images: World War I, World War II, the Napoleonic Wars, the Mongol conquests. The Crusades, conflicts that had consumed entire continents, killed millions, and were documented with disturbing detail. They wrote manuals on how to fight, he continued, his voice shaking. They studied war like we study mathematics. They had philosophers who wrote entire books about military strategy. They taught their children about famous battles. They celebrated warriors as heroes. Another researcher pulled up Earth's cultural data. They made entertainment about war. Movies, books, games, songs. They have a saying, war is hell. They know how terrible it is. And they kept doing it anyway. Why? Someone asked. Why would a species do this to themselves? Because, Dr. Kilrathi said quietly, they had no one else to fight. They were alone on their planet. So they fought each other, for land, for resources, for ideas, for honor. They have 6,000 different languages because they were divided into hundreds of different groups, and each group learned how to survive against the others. The implications settled over the researchers like a cold wind. Humans were not just warriors. They were survivors of 10,000 years of warfare, refined through constant conflict into something that no other species in the galaxy could match. They are a death world species, Dr. Kilrathi concluded, and we never realized it. On Earth, the reaction was very different. The fleet had sent word of their victory. The planet erupted in celebration. For the first time in human history, all nations were united in pride. They had gone to the stars, faced an empire, and won. But in the quiet rooms where military leaders met, the mood was more somber. They had won one battle. They had made an enemy of the Kresh Dominion. And somewhere out there, the Kresh were planning their revenge. We need to prepare, the Chinese premier said during an emergency meeting of world leaders. They will come for us. Let them come, replied the African Union's military commander. We will be ready. Admiral Corbin, still in Valari space helping with relief efforts, received a priority transmission from Earth Command. The message was brief and terrifying. Kresh intelligence indicated that the Dominion was assembling their apex fleet, 2,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled in known galactic history. Their target, Earth Corbin, shared the news with his senior staff. The exhausted men and women who had just survived one impossible battle now faced another. 2,000 ships, Lieutenant Jackson said quietly. We barely survived against 500. Earth is mobilizing every vessel we have, Corbin said. But it will not be enough. We will be outnumbered 10-1. Commander Vasquez, her arm still in a sling from her wounds, looked at the star charts. How long do we have? They will reach our solar system in 30 days. Maybe less if they push their engines. Then we have 30 days to prepare. 30 days to figure out how to do the impossible again. Elena smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. The impossible is starting to become our specialty. The Valari, grateful for their salvation, offered everything they had. Medical technology that could heal injuries in hours instead of weeks. Defensive shields that could strengthen human ships. Manufacturing assistance to build more vessels. We cannot repay what you did for us, the Valari Council leader said, but we can help you survive what comes next.